Okay, history students, let's talk about writing your essay. An essay is a particular thing. It's not a set of random notes. It's not a whole bunch of really impressive information put together in an unstructured way. It has structure. And it's not an informal exchange of ideas between friends or something you'd send on your phone. That's better. An essay looks like this. It's structured into clear boxes of information that we call paragraphs. It refers to other sources. It's clearly in response to a topic. You can see that from the topic at the top of the page. And also it allows room for a reader in the margins to write little comments in response. This is an essay. So what is an essay? An essay, by definition, is a formal piece of writing that makes a convincing argument about a topic. You're taking a point of view and you're selling it. It's a complete piece of writing that stands alone and makes sense to the reader by itself. We don't have to go off to another book or a documentary or something you've referred us to in order to understand it. You've told us everything we need to know to back up your point of view. And so an essay is a great way to sell your argument about an issue. Literally, I mean selling an argument. It's like you're working in a shop, but I don't think anyone would call their shop an argument shop. That sounds weird. I think we'd be more likely to call it an evidence shop. What we're doing is we're selling the best possible evidence in response to a question. So what is the question really asking me to write about? That's the first step of planning your essay. So, any good salesperson needs to think about what their customer is asking. Are they asking you to explain? Are they asking you why did something happen? Are they asking you to analyze or evaluate or compare and contrast? Are they asking, do you agree? Are they asking to what extent? They need an answer and they want to buy it from you. As a history student, you'll most likely have to respond to argumentative types of questions. Do you agree or evaluate, or to what extent? This is asking you to analyse the situation. To analyse, you do have to do some describing events and people, but just in enough detail to justify your argument, not retell everything that happened. You'll need to consider alternative views so that you don't seem completely one-sided in your presentation, and you'll need to refer not to your personal opinion but to the overall weight of evidence that you've looked at in your research. We're looking at 5 to 7 paragraphs classically. That will be up to you to decide, but clearly we need to understand from this, what is your thesis? You need to take a side on this argument. In other words, you need to prove your point of view. So when you're at your evidence shop, the first thing you do is you greet your customer. You want them to come to your shop and buy your products. So you need to start with a great introduction. But it's not really a shop, it's an essay. So it's an introduction. This is the first paragraph you're going to write. You'll know about introductions, and sometimes it's difficult to know where to start. You've got so many relevant points and facts and quotes and interpretations that you're thinking about. You're not going to use them all on the basis of your research. You're only going to use some. So think of the introduction as a funnel. By the end of the introduction, it needs to be really clear to your customer, your reader, where you're going with this. So start with the interesting lead sentence, explain what the question or the topic means in your own words, and then outline what the plan is. So you might have 3 to 5 main points you're planning to present. We need to know what they are by the end of your introduction. And you need to state or suggest what your specific argument or your thesis will be. If I'm a customer at your shop, I'm not going to follow you around your shop unless you tell me where we're going and why. As a good salesperson, you'll be thinking to yourself, how am I going to sell this evidence to my customer? How should I explain the issues and sell the evidence? Well, you do it bit by bit, part of shop by part of shop, topic by topic, and you keep the topics separate. Each of these will become a body paragraph. And if we follow the classic teal format, then we're expecting that each one of these boxes of information that respond to the question is going to be packaged with a topic sentence on top of the box, like a label of what's inside. Okay, guess what? Something is inside that's going to help you answer your question. Then you'll be explaining the point fully. So if the customer says, well, so what? You'll say, well, I am explaining the point fully here, and then I'm going to prove it with evidence and examples that support my point. Then finally, you need to link this back to the question so that we realize this is actually relevant. Possibly you could link to the next paragraph, but most readers prefer you not to overdo this. Within each paragraph, you're using evidence. You're introducing and explaining the evidence that your customer needs to buy from you. How to do it? Well, I would suggest that you write as though your reader is generally familiar with the history but has forgotten the details. That will remind you that you do need to include specific references to dates, places, people and sources in order to convince your reader. Every body paragraph should have at least 2 quotes or 2 specific paraphrases of information. And please do not write this quote as in this quote shows, or as you can see in this quote. We know it's a quote because you're using quotation marks, just go ahead and do it. So, for example, using a quote and cite it, you could use a quote, a full quote, perhaps a whole sentence, and in quotation marks and in brackets behind it, here's the citation, it's the author, the date, and the page number. Or you could place it into context. Just 2 years later, for example, then you introduce the person, say what they said, and in brackets again, author, date, and page number. When you're using evidence and packaging in this way, it makes sense to your reader and it's thoroughly convincing because inside each one of those packages is a clear structure of the topic sentence, the explanation, the evidence, and the link. Then you're packaging something ready for sale. Once you've completed your body paragraphs, then you need to make a final sales pitch. The conclusion is where you come back to the counter. Your customer has these items in bags or boxes, but they haven't bought them from you yet. You need to make your final sales pitch. So with the conclusion, again, it's like a funnel. You're reminding all the different places that you've taken your reader or the different parts of the shop that you've taken your customer to. You might want to restate the general context or the debate of the topic, the many relevant points that there are, summarize the specific points that you've made in your body paragraphs. Looking back at your topic sentences will help you here, and explain how your points actually answered the question. Which side did you end up agreeing with? And if you can, finish with a powerful final sentence. This is your thesis. This is your answer after all, and you want to make sure that your reader is very clear about your point of view. You want a satisfied customer to walk out of your evidence shop. You want them to walk out with neatly packaged evidence and explanations, and that they are satisfied that this responds to the question that they came in to ask. When the customer looks inside their bag, they'll see a receipt. It lists all the things that they've bought from you at your shop. When your reader gets to the end of your essay, they'll find the annotated bibliography. This is a list of your sources, where you present the author, in brackets the date, in italics the title, then the place and the publisher. Bear in mind that in history essays we prefer primary sources to be listed first in alphabetical order and secondary sources second, again in alphabetical order. And for each source we want you to briefly explain the source. 3 or 4 sentences is enough. First, the origin, who was the author or the creator of the source. Secondly, the purpose, what's the general nature or the motive of the text. Thirdly, the value, how is this source useful to understanding your topic. And finally, are there any limitations? Is it incomplete, only covering certain years, for example, or does it give a biased perspective, only presenting one side of the story? Good luck writing your essay.